This is the Team Objection Podcast for October 3rd, 2023, episode 593, 7 away from 600. I haven't even planned episode 600 yet. I have some ideas, but I actually need to talk it over with the crew.
That's like Thanksgiving time frame, isn't it?
Right around there, yeah, but we're not going to have an episode on Thanksgiving week, I don't think, so who knows how that's going to work. Because then it also potentially interferes with our plans for December, which we need to talk about because it's October, as I mentioned at the start. So all of a sudden, like, December's going to be here soon. We want to maybe do something like last year where we record some shows in advance and do a whole big blowout of December, but then the 600th episode can't be in December because that would ruin everything. So we have some things to figure out. We can't force when episode 600 is, but we'll see.
We can't do a decade of music because the 2020s are only 3 years old.
Well, we can go backwards and just make everybody suffer.
How much new music have you listened to from 2020 on anyway? Like speaking personally, I haven't, so I don't even know how you do that.
Does the theme song of Bluey count?
No.
Okay, then none.
Judge rules no.
Yeah, we'd ask the judge. He said absolutely not. Not even a million years.
I would unfortunately have to Google what a song from the 2020s is because I'm coming up blank at the moment.
Just say like Olivia Rodrigo a bunch, and people will believe that you know what you're talking about.
Oh, that's 2018, isn't it?
No, she's right now.
Well, I understand. Oh, that's true. That Bad Idea or whatever. Yeah. There you go.
But she had one album like 2 years ago that was a big deal, and now she's big again. Or just say Taylor Swift because she's still popular, and that still counts.
That's true. I did go to the concert.
She might be more popular than ever because of her connection with the NFL. And we're actually going to talk a little NFL today because Sean's not here.
Yeah.
But it's not really going to be an entire sports episode, so don't be too worried because it's really more about the Toy Story part of that equation. If you don't even know what that is, just stay tuned. Trust me, it's kind of interesting.
It's very interesting.
I brushed up on that today, so it's interesting.
And we're even going to talk a little bit about U2, and you know how I hate U2, but it's also not really about them. It's more so about the opening of maybe the coolest venue on the planet. We'll get to it. But we had to start with the news that you probably saw if you've been connected to us whatsoever, and Dave and I are still wearing Suns gear. It's the end of the DeAndre Ayton era, and I put the word era in quotes because I saw that word used in the aftermath of the trade, and I laughed.
I mean, how can it technically, I guess, you can put anything as an era, but it was just... Can you have a better word to describe this whole time other than just disappointing? I can't think of one.
I know they just kind of use that to mean the turning of a page. You know, it's not really meant to be an era in the strictest sense, but it's like, I don't think it works when another player encompasses his entire time with the Suns and has so much more meaning and impact on the franchise than he does. But regardless, other than the word era being in quotes, Ayton's gone. And I would love to do, if I ever had time, and Lord knows I don't, to do like a compilation of all the things we said about Ayton over the years as we, tried to defend him more than almost anybody else in the Suns fandom did. And still couldn't do it by the end because, boy, when I saw him in his first press conference yesterday at Media Day talking about his name is dominating, I'm like, yeah, he's your problem now. Have fucking fun. Have fun. I'm not rooting against him, to be clear. I'm not like, I don't hate the guy. He's a nice guy. He played well for us overall. He got too much flack at times. But I'm also like, yeah, Portland fans, I've been where you are. I know the signs that you're going through. You're still in the first stage. You have a ways to go.
I saw people on Twitter saying like, man, Suns, what did you do to this poor man? He looks so happy now. I'm like, no. He's been here before. Watch the old interviews. Remember when he said he was like a Tesla battery? That's what he said, how powerful he was going to be.
Last year, in our media day, coming off of the disappointing Game 7 loss that we had against Dallas, he came in and he said he was going to let his actions do the talking. He didn't. And now he's decided he's going to let the talking do the talking again, which... He talks a great game, but again, we've seen these quotes over and over again, and he never backs it up on the court.
You can't look that badly back on this era, I guess, with him, because you guys had so many shitty lottery picks over and over again. At least he got you something back, and you did get to a finals. Like, and I'm grasping for like positive things to say there, but like you've seen how badly it can go with picks like this, anyways, though.
I will give him that, and I have been one of the bigger defenders of Ayton, partially because maybe I'm just too much of an optimist, and I saw how much freaking potential he has. That if he just put it together between the ears, how amazing he would be. But it's just, if you're 5 years in, it's not going to happen. But yeah, you're right. If you want to compare his career and what he gave to us versus Dragon Bender, yeah, I'll take Ayton every single day of the week. Or Marquise Chris or Josh Jackson. Yes, he was much more meaningful to us.
Also, if he produces really well on a team that wins like 35 games, are you going to even care? Like, who cares? It's low pressure. Like, how good would he have to be for you to be like, oh man, I really regret that we traded him? I don't know what the limit is there.
He could put a 25 and 15 next year, and I'd be like, okay, because it's not going to lead to winning basketball, and that's not a shot at Ayton. The Blazers aren't going to be very good next year. They have an interesting young core, and with all these pieces they've picked up, their future does look a lot brighter than we thought it was going to in any Lillard trade as of a week ago. But that's also funny to see people talk about, like, oh, the Blazers have a new number one option, and I'm like, is he their number 3?
Yeah.
Even with how, like, because you got to imagine that Scoot's number 1, and if not, like, as weird as it is to say, Jeremy Grant's going to take 20-plus shots per game. He was doing it with Dame there, so he sure as fuck is going to with DeAndre Ayton there.
I wouldn't be shocked if Grant's the guy who leads them in shots attempted. I feel like that's exactly what's going to end up happening.
Like Shaedon Sharp's a good young player, and like there's enough talent on the Blazers where it's like, I don't think it's a guarantee that Ayton has more shot attempts per game next year than he did this year. Maybe 1 or 2, but it's not going to be like he's getting 25 shots a game. I don't think that's going to be what happens.
I feel like the place where, like, when you're regretting it one way or the other is like 4 years from now when he's probably on another new team and he might be on a title contender then, and you'll see how he reacts to the pressure and big games like that, because I just don't think it's going to happen in Portland. I don't envision them getting good enough in the West with everything else quick enough during like the prime of his career. I feel like you start to look at it when he's shipped somewhere else on the next step. And you're like, okay, how is he doing now?
I mean, yes, I agree. The only way that I really would regret this is if in a couple years he beats us in a playoff series because of his defense. Like, that's kind of the only way I will regret it overall. But I will say, I don't know, things in the NBA can change fast. In 2020, the Suns were barely hanging on in the darlings of the bubble, and now 3 years later, we've been one of the winningest teams in the league record-wise over the last 3 years. So
you're gonna have someone's gonna have to force their way to Portland. That's what we need to have DeAndre Ayton matter.
Think about that. We made the finals and had the best record in the league without anyone forcing our way here.
I know.
So, I mean, things can change quickly. That's all I say. But regardless, back with Ayton, yeah, I would only really regret it if he somehow could get it together and became a dominating defensive force and beat us in the playoffs. Other than that, let's go ahead and score 25 a game. I wish you would have done it here, but you're not going to here. So
he's not going to do it there either unless there's substantial changes coming that I don't think are coming. Like you said, this is year 6 about to start. So is he going to be able to initiate his own offense? Nothing we've seen so far leads me to believe that's the case. So it's like, okay, he's still going to be relying on other people to get him touches, and he's still going to be shooting mid-range jumpers. And it's like, we'll talk about the Nurkic side of this a little bit as well. But to be clear, is Ayton a better player than Nurkic? Yeah. I don't even think it's that close. I saw a few people trying to make the case. And it's like, you can argue that Nurkic might be a better fit. But the idea that he's a better player than DeAndre Ayton is stupid. However, do we need him being soft and shooting mid-range jumpers on a team that's already going to shoot probably an NBA record number of mid-range jumpers? Because somehow, even though we got rid of Chris Paul, by bringing in Bradley Beal, we're probably going to shoot more than ever. Now, in Media Day, the Suns talked about how many good three-point shooters they have, 10 guys who shot better than 35% last year. So I think they're looking to change their shot profile a bit, but old habits die hard, and their 3 main shot takers are all mid-range guys. So maybe you want Nurkic shooting those 3 threes from the corner per game, and you get Ayton out of here and not needing to get touches where he can't catch the ball anyway. So yeah, we'll let Portland figure that out. We can let Anthony Simons try and run pick and rolls with him and then see that he can't catch the ball and just, watch how the frustration builds over the course of a season.
You'll watch the Boston Celtics figure it out when he inevitably ends up as a Celtic in like 3 years when Porzingis' deal that he just signed finishes and you do some shit with that.
He said how much everyone hated him here and how tough it was for him. He said that. He's like, it's tough being hated. You want to go to Boston? They'll cut your head off, dude.
That's what I'm saying. There's so many more cities that he could be in, and it's going to go so much worse than it did in Phoenix.
Yeah, there was briefly mention about, what if, James Harden, you could trade Ayton for Harden. And the Sixers wouldn't do that because they have Embiid, and how the hell would you play those two together? But the idea of DeAndre Ayton in fucking Philadelphia was hilarious to me because I'm like, he'll be crucified in the first 10 games of the season. They'll burn him in effigy on the court, which is not a good look for a young African-American man in society, but nonetheless, it could happen in Boston and it could happen in Philly. So
I also want to point out, I don't think I'd want James Harden on this team as presently constructed. It would be a disaster.
No. And there was never any traction there. It was just, these two don't really like where they're at, so let's just trade them for each other. And it's like, that's not really how NBA deals work. And let's talk about that for a moment, just in the overarching sense. Dame to the Bucks, intriguing. The two of them in pick and rolls and just kind of using control. Dame controls everything 3-point line and beyond, and Giannis controls everything 16 feet and in. So it's like, and I guess Chris Middleton can roam the strip in between because he shoots mid-range jumpers. what an interesting move for them, but also just in general, like how interesting to see that for months, actual months, 2 to 3 months, we heard that it's going to the Heat and the Blazers are just going to have to take Tyler Hero and some scraps and a couple picks. And look at the package the Blazers ended up getting.
They got paid. Like, it's the best way to describe it. Like, they've got, I mean, I don't know. They're not going to be playoff contenders, I don't think, in the West, but they've got draft picks. They've got a good young player. They got more draft picks out of getting Jrue Holiday, which I think was really undersold for what they actually needed, since they're not going to be contenders here in the next couple of years. I mean, the idea that they were just going to sit there and take Tyler Hero and maybe Caleb Martin, I wouldn't even think. It's like Tyler Hero and draft picks, basically. Like, really? Why would they do that? It makes no sense.
Well, here's the end result. I don't even have it in front of me, but we're talking multiple firsts, some pick swaps, and some decent young talent. They could still maybe look to flip Malcolm Brogdon. They could still maybe look to flip Robert Williams or DeAndre Ayton for that matter, because I don't know how the two of those play together. But they've got two young bigs that they can sort of play around with and see what they like, if they need both, because, one could back up the other, whatever, right? But there's a lot of now good young talent on that team between what they already had, just drafting Scoot. So, I don't know if the Blazers could have done any better. And that's interesting because, again, you would have thought they were dead on arrival as of a week ago. There was really no rumors about the Bucks whatsoever. It was Heat, maybe the Raptors, and that was it. And all of a sudden, it's like, now the Bucks, you can ask questions defensively because as good as Giannis is, he can't cover for everything. And Brook Lopez is also good. Their perimeter defense might just suck. So they're going to have to be at their best to be good defensively. But offensively, they were one of the worst half-court teams in the NBA last year. And now they've brought in one of the best basket creators and shot makers in the league to pair with Giannis. So it's like, hey, maybe Giannis can try a little harder on the defensive end because he can just turn the ball over to Dame in the fourth if he's tired. Be like, all right, you go get your shots. I'll do my thing. It's an interesting fit, and it's interesting to see that, between that and then the subsequent deal the Celtics made to get Holiday out of all of this, the rich got richer here. Like, you can definitely tell there's a clear line of about 5 teams if you want to put the Lakers in that top echelon. Yeah, I don't want to, but maybe. If Hachimura and Reeves are actually as good as they seemed to be last year, maybe. But the point is, there's a clear gap between top 4 or 5, and then, because, Philly's not in that conversation. Miami, even though they made the finals, doesn't deserve to be in that conversation because they got worse, and Lowry got older. In the West, you're like, okay, Memphis is missing Jaw for so many games, and, so there's a top echelon, and 2 of those teams improved just in the last week.
Yeah, I'm interested. You mentioned about the Bucks and their, how they might fall a little bit on defense. I think they're going to realize how important Jrue Holiday was to them. I mean, Giannis absolutely was the reason they won the finals, but Jrue was to me, a close second why they won the finals against us a couple years ago. Because without his defense on Chris Paul, without his stopping at the point of attack, I don't know how they win the finals that year. So I think they're going to really miss that defensive stopper. But on the flip side, you trade offense for defense in this sense and have one of the best deep range shooters to stretch the floor and then let Giannis just go nuts, bowling over people. We'll see how it works.
Yep. I think it's going to be interesting to watch. I'm very intrigued to watch Milwaukee play now because it's going to be such a difference between their previous style of play and this. Giannis will still do Giannis things, but imagine the looks Brook Lopez might get now. Yeah. And he was already a very good three-point shooter. It's really fascinating to watch his career arc. When you go to his basketball reference page and his shot profile changing, and he made himself into one of the league's best defenders. So even with him as the 4th best player, that's pretty good. They've lost some depth. Keep hearing about depth. All talk about depth. Well, they lost some over the course of this, but that's what you have to do to get stars in this league. The Suns have done it. The Bucks now have done it. The Celtics are kind of seeing that same problem because imagine now, think about this, the Celtics, who we thought, the Celtics have this good young core. Grant Williams is gone. Robert Williams is gone. Marcus Smart is gone. Now Brogdon's gone. Brogdon was only there a year. But all these depth pieces, starter or close to quality players, have turned over. Now they have Porzingis, who's better. But if he's hurt, he won't be. So a lot of these teams seem to be following the same model, which is bank on stars and figure out the rest. We'll see which one of those teams ends up taking down the title this year.
And I will say, the one good thing about this trade, I think the Suns did get a little bit of depth. I think Grayson Allen, as much as people might hate him for good reason in the past, I mean, I did like what he said. We'll get into Media Day. I did like kind of what he said at Media Day, where he acknowledged his faults of the past. But, I mean, what can you say? The guy's a good three-point shooter. length, a little bit, not long, super long, but a decent defender, good 3-point shooter. He's exactly the type of guy you need in there. Not Nazir Little, I believe is his name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, one of those types of wings that James Jones looks for. I think getting rid of Tamani kind of sucks because he had potential, but he wasn't going to play much on this team.
No.
So again, we kind of got just a little bit more depth after everyone said that we had none after having our big 3 stars.
Problem is, it's sort of it's akin to the depth we had last year, where it's like we might have the deepest 15-man roster in the league. We've got NBA caliber players all the way through 15, and there's not really much debate about that. But we don't need 15 players in playoff time. We need 7 or 8, and if there's injuries, maybe you extend that 1 or 2 more spots. But I'm not sure we got better in that regard. I think Allen's closer to a rotation player than several other guys in our rotation. But between like Bates, Diop, and Watanabe, like we'll go over the Suns in full detail with the roster and whatnot as we close out training camp and we're about to start the season. We'll do a full preview, but there are still question marks, just like with every team in the league right now. But for me, the biggest thing, honestly, is not anything to do with any of the players coming or going, but just more manageable contracts. Because now, instead of having one DeAndre Ayton size deal, you've got Nurkic, you've got Little, you've got Keon Johnson. If he even makes the team, he might get cut. Like a lot of smaller deals that you can package together in ways that you want to maybe get one more piece for the stretch. So to me, that's the biggest win is getting off of DeAndre's money. Even though you took back about as much, I think it was actually slightly more overall. It's a lot more flexible, and some of it drops off in 2 years.
It feels great, too, again, like you said, we took back more money. This wasn't a cost-cutting deal. Some people I saw online said that, not understanding what that meant because Nurkic's contract was wanting. No, we spent about $5 million more because of this trade. Ishbia's there to go in, and I like to see it.
So along those lines, what things I like to see was yesterday's media day. It kind of worked out nicely for the timing of this because the Ayton trade happened. We were all off, gone for a week. It was right after a show anyways, but then we could talk about both things in one fell swoop because yesterday, look, it's media day, and just like in any sport, whether it's the pro level or high school or whatever, everybody always has the right things to say the first day because nobody hates each other yet. Nobody's gotten mired in losing yet. It's just everybody's all hugs and handshakes and having a great time being there. But the main takeaway I had from Media Day wasn't anything specific. It was just everybody kind of seems locked in. And maybe it was just because I wasn't looking for somebody like Ayton to give goofy quotes and be having like grinny grin happy time. But everybody just talked about the task at hand, talked about sacrificing for others. Now, I don't know where I'm going to play exactly, but I want to contribute to this team. It seems like a team where I'm going to enjoy the culture because they just want to win. And we know that starts at the top with, I guess you could say Book and KD, but also Beal. They're all guys that just like the ball, and they all want to have more individual success. KD's won 2 titles, but more than anything, I just watched that and I was like, yeah, like even the 13th guy on the roster has saying the right things. I'm excited. Let's go.
How many guys do you have left from your finals team?
1.
Is it really just Book?
Devin Booker.
Yeah. That is crazy. To Dave's point, like that's how quickly things change. Like I'm like looking at the picture on there and I'm like, well, that's weird to look at all of a sudden that like you did ship out Ayton and Paul. And so now and the package you sent for Durant, I'm like, holy shit, your team's drastically different all of a sudden. But you're still really good.
Yeah.
It's just shocking.
It's funny when Christy mentioned about Durant having 2 titles. I think it's funny how everyone's looking at this, especially the 3 stars. When I look at Beal, always in mediocrity in Washington forever. Always, 41-41 every year pretty much. Barely in the playoffs or not in the playoffs. Booker came from, terrible teams, then made himself into a superstar. Both of them are hungry for a title to get out of that next step. Durant, on the other hand, has the 2 titles, has the 2 finals MVPs, but no one, in a weird way, no one thinks he deserves those 2 titles for what it went through for the Warriors. So this title in a different way would mean so much in a different way for him. So he's just as locked in as the guys who don't have a title in some weird way. So it's kind of awesome to see how much they want to be there.
Mm-hmm. And I hesitate to do this because I don't want to give Flex any credit, but I had to cite my sources. On one of the podcasts after Media Day, he talked about how it was almost like Devin Booker got traded, in the sense that in the last 6 months, new owner, new coaching staff, and an entirely new roster. And normally when this happens, it's a sign that things have gone terribly wrong. And in this case, it's like retooling and just kind of reassembling a roster that should still work around him. Now, again, I'm not saying, well, we're going to win a title. But the Suns are one of the lead contenders this year. There's not really a whole lot of debate about that. People can argue about how high their ceiling is or whatever. But they're in the mix, and it's unusual to see this because one of the things we talked about with the Nuggets, and they won the title last year, was continuity. And I guess the idea was, well, we're not going to have much continuity anyways with a new owner and a new coaching staff and a new offensive system. So the hell with it. Like, what's the difference if there's one or two guys who have been around? Let's just get the best pieces around Booker possible and figure it out from there.
Well, and guys that just, again, like you mentioned, everyone's locked in. Everyone just wants to play. It doesn't seem like anyone is here to advance their lives. No one's here to like try to do anything off the court. It's just, I mean, Beal is that type of guy. It looks like he's just, all right, I want to play ball. That's all I want to do. I just want to get out here and do. That's what seemingly everybody wants to do. They seem to already like each other in the sense like Yuta Watanabe wants to be here because he played so well with Durant and had such a great relationship with Durant in Brooklyn. There's just so many things that seemingly, and again, you mentioned it's media day. Everything's always kind of optimistic on media day, but this one felt a little different in how much talent is here and also how locked in they are.
Which is odd because, I mean, they're going through their first practices now, and we got a couple glimpses from some of the Suns' social media. Like, who the hell knows what this is going to look like? How much they'll keep from the previous system, since we know, lead assistant and main offensive guy is still there. Like, there's a lot of question marks. That's why it's funny. I mean, we were texting about this on the side thread. The Arizona Republic's like, we're going to predict every Suns game each month of the season, and it's like this was before the Ayton trade, just to show the ultimate folly of such an endeavor. But it's like, I don't even know, because who's the fifth starter? I don't know right now. We might not know for 4 weeks. So it's not even worth trying to guess at the basketball stuff right now. In addition, just look at yesterday. We heard Damian Lee's out for probably most of the season, if not all of it, with a torn meniscus. Like, things change so fast in the NBA. No greater example than these deals in the last week. So the idea of trying to figure out what it all means, I'm just enjoying so far. It's like media day, and it's training camp. Fine. We'll worry about the season projections and what's going to happen in a month. But for now, I liked watching the crew together. It was great seeing these three in particular. And just Booker, I guess we've talked about it to death on this show. If anything, it's interesting because we didn't really have the podcast when Steve Nash was still playing. He was playing in LA like the last year or two. That didn't happen. He was never in a Laker uniform. So we didn't have a chance to gush over Nash like we did back then, at least in a recorded fashion. But man, like, this is year 9 for Book, even though he's only 26. And it's like, God, he's still here. And he had the great line about, like, when did you arrive on the scene? He's like, I've been on the scene since 96. And you're like, God damn.
That's when you were born, sir.
He accidentally says the coolest thing sometimes, which is funny because he's so corny about other things sometimes. You're like, this dude just dropped that line, but he also got into it with a mascot, which was overblown. But still, like, it's weird. So anyways, just appreciation for Book and how media savvy he is now. He talked about Ayton in a really good light. He talked about the new players on his team, the new coaching, the new ownership. Like, the dude deserves this team he's on, and I hope for any number of reasons they can deliver a title.
Yeah. And I laugh just about another media day thing real quick. Cody, your hair is almost like Jimmy Butler's. Very close to Jimmy Butler's hair.
You copied me,
I
know.
You push it over a little bit more, it might actually hit that. There you go. There you go. There it is. There's the Jimmy Butler hair I was looking for. That was hilarious. I don't know what he was doing.
I've had this hair since I was in high school. He copied this vibe. I enjoyed all the really emo puns, by the way, that were on Twitter because of that. Because Ball Out Boy and Jimmy Heat World were fucking great.
Yeah.
Just absolutely great.
I told that to my wife yesterday after showing the picture, and she's like, whoever wrote that is an absolute genius. Yeah. Ball Out Boy is a genius.
Yeah. Like, Jimmy Heat World was good. Very good, but it wasn't on the same level as Ball Out Boy. I don't know.
That's true.
By the way, from the perspective of you do those photo day shoots for graphics later, he fucked them so bad. Just to point out.
Oh, absolutely. For the second straight year.
Like, yeah, what he did, like, they have to either redo a shoot with him specifically if they want promo material the correct way, or he actually has to look like that throughout the season. And I'm sure someone's going to tell him, like, we have to do another photo shoot now, you jackass. Thanks a lot.
Do you think he cares?
No, I don't think he cares. It's just really funny that he made the common person's job so much harder. And then they looked at him, and they had to look at him and be like, you fucking kidding me right now? I get that you're emo about not getting any player you wanted, but come on.
2K last year gave up. They were just like, we're going to use his old photo instead of the dreadlock one because he doesn't look like that anymore, and didn't for more than like 2 days. So they just said, the hell with it. We're going back to last year's. We'll see what the Heat's team squad does.
He's such a pain in the ass. I really look forward to his legacy when he's no longer in the league and all the weird shit I'm sure he's going to get into.
Cody, isn't that exactly what you want? Like, he just trolls. Like,
Yes.
don't you love that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I mean, I don't know. It probably gets old when he's on your team to an extent. Except for then he goes and actually does produce in the playoffs, so that you can't even fucking get that mad.
No.
Like, you're a Heat fan. He's going to be one of your favorite players of all time. He's fucking willed you into the finals.
There was a tweet from like a disgraced beat reporter that was like 98% of the organization thinks that's not a reflection of Heat culture, and it's like, boy, you got to get that stick all the way out of your ass.
Yeah, man.
Because like if he had had a clunker in the playoffs, if he hadn't shown up when it mattered, then you can have that conversation. Even though I still think it's stupid, but he was great in the playoffs. He was the second best player or third best player in the playoffs. Like, what he does should be unassailable. It's media day. Who fucking cares?
The ratio of what a guy actually is to how much he outperforms that in the playoffs, he has to be among the all-time leaders of like actually stepping it all the way up to pull this shit off. So then, he gets to be a weirdo whenever he wants to be a weirdo, and he's in Miami, so it's great.
Yep. I thought it was funny. So I was looking at that, I was like, "Yep, that's it, perfect."
I thought it was fake at first because I saw a still and I didn't see like the video. And I thought someone had like photoshopped and was like, "Wow, why the fuck did they do that?" And then I realized it was legitimately real. And
I wonder how long he spent on that, because that's a lot of straightening to get the hair looking like that. That's not easy, like, for anybody's hair.
That was the weirdest part too. Is because it's East Coast, so we were getting those, early Arizona times. It's like, what are you doing? It's too early in the morning for this
shit. Yeah,
get out of here. But that said, fuck the Heat. They overachieved last year, and it's funny to watch them completely lose out in the Damian Lillard sweepstakes. So, bye.
That's because they were tampering, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's what Jimmy said, and we know he's infallible as a source. Yeah. We do have to talk a little bit about a fever dream. If you didn't see the picture on the screen, if you can see it, and if you're listening to the podcast, of course you cannot, doesn't really do it justice either way. So I need you just to go just do a search for like NFL Toy Story. They called it Fun Day Football, but either way, just go do a search. You'll find some gifs and stuff, and you'll know what we're talking about.
I will specifically tell you, look up Bijan Robinson Toy Story highlights, and there's someone cut them all together, which he was the most impressive player in that game. So go find that with the music it's set to, and just watch the highlight package of Bijan Robinson. That's all. And you can find it on Twitter. It's very easy to find.
But to give it like the 30-second description, it was essentially a rebroadcast of a football game at a really early hour, as it turned out.
6:30.
Yeah, which that's a choice. And it was done with essentially like computer chips that were tracking the players' movements, and they recreated a football field inside Andy's room from Toy Story with all sorts of little Toy Story like references scattered about, like Slink being the first down marker, like the stretch, like the Slinky aspect being the way they would measure the chains and all that stuff. So like, when I say fever dream, I kind of mean it because the highlights were both neat and kind of weird. So first we got to talk about the concept, and then I want to talk about the overall application too.
Well, the idea of it so CBS is Nickelodeon, same company. They've been taking NFL games and putting them on Nickelodeon for kids to watch, putting in fake little slime cannons. The very hilarious clip last year was the voice of Patrick Starr was calling the game when Russell Wilson threw a pick six and, did the "that's not what he wanted to cook" type of thing, which they had a lot of fun making fun of. Mm-hmm. And so Disney got a hold of this London game to be on ESPN Plus and wanted to recreate the same thing. I think in their IP, Toy Story makes the most sense, right? Like, did you want like a Monsters Inc. game? I don't know what else would be better.
I mean, Marvel maybe, but that's no. Toy Story is by far the best thing. And to call it Fun Day Football, you get a whole era of people who just kind of tune in to see what it is, what's going on. It's the NFL is doing everything they can to ensure that you are crossing every bridge of people that you possibly can to reach every intersection of popular media that you can. The Taylor Swift thing, whether that's how much of that is fabricated or not. It's working. I don't know how much they actually care. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce care about each other, but it's working. Like, holy shit, the amount of stuff I see now on social media, people care. It's insane to me. So this is just one other thing where it's like, hey, do you want to have kids watch the NFL and get a little bit interested in it? There you go. Here's a way of doing it.
I thought it was interesting because the technology worked pretty well. There were a few glitches. I think it's to be expected overall, given that it's basically recreating a live broadcast in real time. Like, it tracked the players pretty good.
The ball was the problem because the ball was the one that was randomly, and then they had like every time they brought the crane in, the crane fucked everything up for some reason.
Right, which was a really funny concept, but it didn't work
the crane
in
spotting the
practice.
ball kept making the ball glitch, but like because there's a couple highlights where the ball is floating off somewhere in the distance randomly, and the players are all patterned correctly and actually look pretty fucking good. And I was watching, and I'm like, to be able to measure the players out in live speed, to have made the characters this big, to match the yardage marker and make them ratioed the correct way, I was like, holy shit, that's actually really impressive.
I did laugh the first touchdown, the Calvin Ridley touchdown. Every replay they showed, the ball's on the ground. It's like touchdown Jaguars, like, but the ball's on the ground.
Yeah.
What the?
There were so many balls. Like they scored. There was another touchdown that went into the end zone, and it's like he's like diving for it, and the ball's right here, and then he's like, and then like they're like, oh, touchdown celebrating. I'm like, well, the ball's incomplete in my opinion because that's what it looks like.
Right.
So this is really confusing. The funny, I did really appreciate the announcers that were on there. I cannot remember who the play-by-play guy is, but Booger McFarlane, who gets made fun of quite a lot on ESPN, they didn't take it seriously. And I think that's what I appreciated, is that they were just having all kinds of fun, because I don't know if you guys saw, but behind the scenes, they are in like skin-tight suits to map them while they're doing the announcing. So they're in full like video game mapping like spandex, and they're sitting there calling the fucking game in this spandex in this weird warehouse place.
They understood the assignment. They understood, like, okay, this is going to be a little goofy and weird, but we might as well embrace it. And it did make the broadcast better for it.
Yeah. I mean, I would have turned it off, I think, if those two weren't having as much fun as they were. And because they recycled a lot of the same clips and redos where Woody and Jesse are like swing dancing with each other and shit. So it got a little bit repetitive at a certain point. For an adult, for a kid, they're not going to care. And it was a good game to do it for, because again, it's the London game where it's in its own time slot. It's not a primetime game that you're taking attention away. It's already the game that people aren't going to watch a ton at 6:30 in the morning on the West Coast.
It was Drew Carter was the play-by-play guy. I just looked it up.
He did a really good job, like really, really good job.
Yeah, you gotta be silly with this. You gotta be a little nuts. I remember he said it was like first and slink at one point. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I appreciate that. I absolutely appreciate that, first and slink.
It is first and slink. He's right.
I did say, I remember watching this, and I did say to my wife, I'm like, how many drugs were they on when they thought of this? Because this is insane. This is an insane level of technology. And Chris, like you said, fever dream. It's like somebody woke up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night and said, football and Toy Story. This is it.
And it worked, again, to varying degrees, sure, but they had to test this and be like, no, this actually this will survive a live broadcast. Like, it's not so buggy and so messy. It was weird, but I don't think you can call it anything but a success, despite some of the blips. Like, it worked, but it also makes me have questions about, like, the future of sports.
Yeah.
You know, and just if you limit it to the NFL, and I'm not trying to criticize the NFL with this is true of a lot of sports, but it's like, we have technology in tennis where we can see a replay down to like the millimeter as far as whether a serve is in or out or whatever, right? And we have this stuff in football now where it's pretty accurately tracking the players. And yes, putting a chip in the ball is different because if it fucks with the ball in any way whatsoever, all the players are going to riot, right? But like, why are we still using chains to measure the first down when we have this technology? Why are we still using human umpires when we have a robot that can call it so much better than Angel Hernandez can? Like, what are we doing? The technology is prevalent now.
The idea of spotting a football by a human being is ludicrous to me in some ways, where you're like, yeah, I think he stopped here. Okay. All right, now we're going to bring out this chain and, oh, sorry, he's this short. Game over. What?
Yeah. Because you definitely could tell where when his knee was simultaneously hitting, where the ball was, and his elbow turning and all this shit. I'm like, yeah, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
And that's not even completely a criticism of NFL refs who deserve plenty of criticism, but it's like, that's an impossible task. Yes, sometimes in replay, you can't even tell exactly where the ball should be spotted because it's like obscured by other players, or God knows when you can do it in real time.
I do wonder if this was the backdoor entrance into that of chipping all their shoulder pads to see how accurately they could be measured on a fake field of like, all right, well, why wouldn't you just try measuring the ball in the preseason with like these chips in the next couple of years? It's not going to hurt anything.
And also like Sport Track. You know, like the NBA can tell you who ran the most miles last season on the court. Like, wouldn't you want to have that for the NFL as well?
I mean, they brag about all their Amazon shit all the time. Amazon data crap, and look, we can see what the probability of this catch was. If you can tell me when the guy reaches up, it was a 23% chance of being completed, you could probably tell me I don't care about the measurement of the ball, and if it feels different, a microchip's not going to weigh that much, you know?
Well, the microchip might not weigh that much, but also like, Nowadays, cars drive because of cameras and cameras alone. Like it used to
Exactly.
be based on radar systems and stuff like that. Cars are driving themselves almost now by just having cameras. Like the camera technology we have is absolutely insane. So
I laugh because they have the camera in the pylons now that is at the first down marker, not just the end zone. They
Yeah.
cut to it and they showed it in a game, and I'm like, well, if the fucking camera is in the pylon and we can see that he got the first down, why is this a coach's challenge? You have the camera that you provided and the view is right there. Why don't you help the poor humans out a little bit?
25 years ago we had the glow puck. This is not that much different, really.
I did enjoy that for this Toy Story one because the ball was tough to follow. They actually did the glow puck technology on the ball in the Toy Story thing because I'm like, there were so many play action fakes and shit where you're like, all right, I actually can't tell if he handed it off. And then it's still in the quarterback's hand. The one thing as a giant football nerd is I'm sure children wouldn't have any appreciation or care for this. Getting to watch a football game from the all 22 Madden view, holy fucking shit. Everyone has said how much better it is and how much more you can understand the game. And all the teams are weird about it and don't want it to be on TV because someone might be able to see something and all this crap. I'm like,
not that everyone else doesn't have it already.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, don't teams already have access to
They
that
do.
footage internally?
I think they don't want it in game because people will watch the television broadcast and call things out and shit like that, I think is the thought process because the all 22 is for scouting and not live. It is. I'm just imagining because then we saw the comparison clips, right? They use some of the all 22 to show you how similar it was. We've all played Madden for the most part for years and years, and everyone has said this is the best way to watch fucking football. I doubt it, but I'm like, please let this be the entryway to that. I'll pay you extra fucking money if I can watch the all 22 game like live. It makes football so much better, and you understand so much more.
You have no idea how much is going on outside of the box that you get to see on the screen. The wide receivers blocking on the edge, the guard pulling, whatever it is. Yeah, I get what you mean.
You think that someone has a running lane, blah, right? Like while you're watching the side view of it. No, maybe they don't. And then all of a sudden you watch the all 22 and it's like, oh yeah, that guy missed the hole really fucking badly. It was right there. They had blocked it perfectly. Again, as a person who played defensive back in high school, I care what the fuck the corners are doing against the wide receivers.
Yeah, or the safeties and how they're doing read coverage and like where they're heading to on a route.
It's like this is a passing league now. We have a running view of the NFL when we watch it on TV in a passing league that almost everything is going 10 yards downfield. And it just that's why we hung on to watching. I'm like, I can actually break this down way better while I'm watching it on fucking Toy Story.
One of the coolest videos I ever saw, replays I ever saw, was when the Cardinals won the Super Bowl, when Larry Fitzgerald had that long touchdown. They showed the all-22 view, and we saw how two outside wide receivers went outside, and both the safeties followed them, opening up the entire middle for Fitz to run right down. Exactly. It's like, oh, I could see how this was broken, how the coaches broke this one down. Yeah, and it's amazing that you have to rely on Toy Story to get that view in a live game. Absolutely crazy.
And I'm like, there's no way they're using this as scouting, but I'm like, was this any different? Like, you still did the all-22 thing. I get that they're cartoon characters, but the players,
they're there
correctly. The players occasionally on the offensive line, they glitched when they leaned up and stuff like that right before pre-snap. But otherwise, the defense is lined up how the defense was lined up, I think 95% of the time. And I'm like, man, it is so much more fun to watch this. And you have all the camera angles to do it.
I think it would improve so many aspects, but like the linebacker. That's what I like to play when I was playing Madden on defense was linebacker. And it's like, okay, is he in QB spy? Is he blitzing? Is he in drop coverage? Is he like, what is like? You can see that now. And it's like, we're spoiled because most of us are big like NBA fans. I was an NHL fan. I wish I could get back into it, but it's like the strength of those games is you can focus on one side at a time. You know, for the most part, yeah, quick, fast breaks and turnovers and breakaways, whatever. But like, you can see, if you can follow the action, especially on HD TVs, the passing, the spacing, the cutting, the off ball or puck movement that makes those games click. And then, like you said, with the NFL, it's like, well, we might have 16 of these 22 players on the screen at a time, maybe. And, you know, even then, once the play starts, the wide receivers break out of frame unless they're being thrown to. So, like,
I mean, imagine watching the Golden State Warriors in the NBA and not knowing where two of the 5 players on the court were.
Yeah, where's Steph Curry? Oh, he just crawled around the screen. He has the ball. He's shooting. Oh, whoa. Where did he come from?
Imagine that. I can't fucking, like, all of a sudden, oh, Curry, we had to pan over. He's in the corner hitting a 3. Oh, shit. We missed the pass.
Like the classic double bang shot, and he's not in frame when it happens.
I mean, again, it's somehow the NFL has persevered and is, you know, the number one sport on TV and over and over again for God only knows what actual reason that we Americans have done this, but...
I mean, if you think about it, football is fun to watch for casuals and hardcores. That's why.
Yeah.
Because, yay, he scored a touchdown. Oh, man, why didn't you tackle it? Like, that's the way casuals can watch it.
It's the middle ground of scoring while there's still action. Because baseball scores kind of like, I mean, if you did amount of touchdowns versus amount of runs in a game, it's almost the same thing.
Yeah,
baseball
exactly.
gets too slow and gets boring, and the hockey probably doesn't score enough, and the NBA is scoring all the time, so you're right. Like the casual thing, you're like, just get to that point right there, and it's kind of hard to do. So see if they can pull it off on this drive.
But
You're right. That's a good point.
And every once in a while, a game is 49-42, and they do it a whole bunch, and it's fun. So, but if you do it too much, then it's the Arena League. So then no one likes that.
No, you gotta go, and not the XFL either. We don't want that. But I gotta say, and I don't really give a shit about football or baseball. I just don't. But like, props to the NFL and props to MLB for being willing to try and attract more casual viewers, because it's going to be the way sports leagues survive. And they've both had some success stories now. MLB shaved like 35 minutes off its average game time. Stolen bases were rampant this year. We talked about some of the changes when I had posed that question for Cody a couple weeks back.
Attendance was up 30 or a ton.
Yeah, like
30.
Their success story, and people would have said both those leagues were sort of heading the wrong direction sometime in the last 5 or 10 years for any number of reasons. And there's still the whole like CTE concussion stuff leaning over the NFL and domestic violence. But like, they're trying, and I have to give them credit for that much because their attempts seem to be working.
I will say, given the fact that there's been like 3 horrifically horrible injuries in the NFL this season, they are so lucky they got through the Toy Story game without like the knee severing thing that happened to Nick Chubb where his leg is dangling out. And ESPN even, or whoever it was, didn't replay it for once.
That's how bad it was.
It was so bad. They finally didn't do that.
It's interesting. They didn't replay it because you know what? If you want to find it, it's easy.
Go on Twitter.
It's on Twitter. It's been posted within 45 seconds and then claimed because the NFL doesn't like some of its clips.
Or last night's Monday night game where a safety came in and dove, putting his head down because he's stupid, got kneed in the head and was just wobbling off of the field. I would love to see the Toy Story guy wobbling around as he tries to get off the field with the trainers. They really got through, I think, with very minimal injuries, or strategically the Toy Story one, which was on a delay, I think of like a solid, almost a minute, it felt like.
I'm just imagining the cartoon players all like huddling in solidarity around a downed player, like
that's what I'm saying. Like
kneeling in prayer, and
they're mad,
and you can
like
see
that.
Rex in the background. You're like, this is not tonally appropriate.
Exactly. They managed to get through that, so I mean, lucky for them that they didn't have anything weird conundrum kind of come up in that way.
So overall, a success. It's got me interested in the NFL more than anything else this season. Yes, including Taylor Swift. Sorry, everybody.
How dare you?
It's fine. I mean, I did enjoy the jokes on social media about how Taylor Swift put Travis Kelce on the map, and then people getting mad at that. I'm like, it's a joke, guys. It's a joke.
Hell hath no fury like a Swiftie scored.
Well, the great news for all those companies that put Kelce in their commercials after he won the Super Bowl, now everybody actually does know who he is because he's in like 5 different fucking commercials right now, including Pfizer COVID stuff. And I'm like, boy, what a great job. They lucked out.
Aaron Rodgers called him Mr. Pfizer the other day.
He sure did.
He's so bitter.
He sure is. He has to watch Zach Wilson every week, though, so you understand.
One last hilarious thing for the NFL is, by the way, Taylor Swift's so popular that Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman were also in that box.
Nobody cared.
And no one, they didn't even mention that they were up there, and they are very, very famous people.
Blake Lively was in that box.
Oh, yeah, because of Ryan Reynolds stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and nobody cared.
I had to ask, like, who is that? Because I'm like, she's way cuter than Taylor Swift. Who is that? Oh, it's Blake Lively. I didn't know that.
They kept cutting, and I'm like, boy, that guy looks a lot like Ryan Reynolds. I'm like, damn, I guess he is a basic-looking white dude. I had no clue it was Ryan Reynolds until the next day when they're like, yeah, Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman were in there too. And then I love the cuts to Aaron Rodgers, who's just the angriest human being up there the whole time, getting no attention for once.
Mm-hmm. Look at me. It's like the CM Punk thing. Look at me. Wrestling reference. Sorry, Dave. Last topic this week. We've seen the Sphere in Vegas. If you haven't, I don't know what you've been missing out on. It's been viral multiple times because of there was the basketball for Summer League just looming over the horizon like a massive sun. There was the eyeball. There was the emoji. There was there was all sorts of stuff that was just like, okay, the exterior of this Sphere is hilarious for marketing and advertising purposes because of its potential. For the first time this past weekend, we got to see what it might be like inside the Sphere. Hadn't been a ton of footage leaked of what that might look like in the lead up to U2's opening concert there. I want to go see a concert in the Sphere. It looked fucking awesome. And yes, it's going to be sold out into oblivion for God knows how long. And tickets, yes, it was the first one, but tickets were like $500 plus just to get in the door.
It's cheaper than Taylor Swift, so that's still not bad.
Yeah, and this one, of course, because it was the first one, was super celebrity laden. Like Oprah was there and God knows who else. So I get all that, but I'm like, I don't even know if I care. I want to see certain acts and not other ones, but I'm not like I'm not trying to see a specific act there. The venue for me is doing as much of the lifting as the potential music there.
Isn't it? I mean, like I would pay like $250. I don't think I'd even like scoff at that. I'm like, I
don't think so. Yeah,
I paid a lot of money for concerts that are like hard to get into for festivals and shit, where I have to stand in the heat and the big old fucking crowd. I'm like, I'm gonna go see 2 people play in there for 3 hours and for $250. I mean, the picture's amazing.
What's the seating capacity that you saw? Did you happen to find that?
I don't know.
Of how many
there, I will say,
as
a person who pays attention to a lot of Vegas news.
Yeah, I know.
There,
18,600 supposedly.
A decent chunk of those are crappy obstructed views in a way. From what I understand, they made some mistakes with the way they like kind of measured it all out. So, but like, you're going to be able to get a good view without, I think, struggling too much.
Well, if anything, it appeals to me because I don't really want to be on the floor.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of those obstructive views ones were on like the back ends of the floor.
Exactly.
Whereas the second and third levels are looking like directly at the screen. And you're going to get not only like the cool like visual stuff, but also, shots of the band playing. And, sometimes when you're at a concert, if you're sitting in the upper deck, you're watching the screens because you can see the performers moving around, but they're like ants, right? So sometimes you watch the TV screens. Well, what better fucking TV screen to watch than this? This is better than like the big ass Cowboys scoreboard or whatever. Like, what a cool. And the other factor, by the way, not in addition to the visual stuff, was apparently the acoustics were also really good. Because we've all been to a concert where it's like you can't really make out the lyrics, and you know the band, so you know the song. Your brain fills it in, but if you're like actually sitting there listening, you're like, I don't know what words are being said. I hear vowel sounds sometimes. So like, if it all actually works, this is a place I would easily pay the upcharge for because I would consider this a destination, even if it wasn't one of my favorite bands playing. As long as I like them, I would go.
Yeah, I can see that, and just I don't know. Vegas always does this where they play it up and just have this, the spectacle of it. And holy shit, do they have the spectacle of this? You talked about just what they put up there in the beginning. I'm so mad at myself. I was in Vegas in July last summer. And as I was driving home, my wife was driving, and I was scrolling through Twitter. I'm like, what's this sphere thing? Oh, it's built? Oh shit, I could have driven a mile down the road and seen it? God damn it.
Mm-hmm.
I was so mad at myself. But I mean, it's amazing. It's a technological marvel. I cannot even get over just the amount of LEDs that they had to put on the outside, what they can display on there, how they set this out. It is a modern engineering miracle, and I'm amazed. I'm blown away by it, and I'm with you, Chris. I would love to go see a show there just to see it in action.
So many of the hotels are lucky this thing got built when they didn't have to pay any money for it, because a handful of them on that back part of the strip over there, now I have to charge for parking because everyone was fucking parking in their parking lots to go look at it, and they didn't want to let them do that anymore. But B, like, how there's like, I want a strip view room. Well, now you're in the fucking Venetian. I'm like, no, I want the sphere view room.
Now
I don't care.
The Sahara's back, baby.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, that group up there that, I mean, doesn't have, is not they're bad, but like, I think it's the Wynn, the Encore, the Palazzo, the Venetian, all that stuff on that side, like. I mean, even some of the ones across the strip, because you can still see through on some of those rooms, like all those hotels are going to probably start charging a little bit more for some of those rooms. And that $10, $15, $20 over and over again each night is going to go a long way.
Yep.
And I mean, again, Vegas is doing really well since the pandemic. And obviously they're squeezing the shit out of everybody right now to try and make up for all the money that they lost.
Higher fees in Vegas. Jeez.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the cool part of this, and I mean, U2 is the one, I guess, who's in there now, but whatever. Vegas has actually done a pretty good job, I think, in the last like 7-8 years of starting to get actually big time musicians to have residencies again, which I don't think was happening for a long time. That's why we don't see a lot of like shows anymore. I feel like very few of the casinos even have, this off Broadway type show. Now they're getting a bunch of people to like come in. They're going to play 3 times for 3 straight weeks, and they're going to go away for a little bit and come back. This is going to open up. A lot of bands are going to want to play in this thing once they see what it is, and you're going to probably get a lot of people to do some residencies and hold that for a little bit.
The dream, of course, for me is Muse.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite live bands I've ever seen anyways, so I'm like, what could they do with this? Because they're already way over the top over almost anybody else in the industry as far as what they do for their stage shows, and I'm like, what could they do with this? Yeah. What could be possible? But like I said, it wouldn't just be like, oh, well, Muse is there, so or Chili Peppers there, I'll go see. Like, if it was, like, I'm not a huge Fall Out Boy guy. But if they were there and I could get tickets and the dates worked out, I would go see Fall Out Boy there because I'd be like, that's a good band, and I want to see this place up close.
Because you said the capacity is like 18,000.
Yeah, they say up to like 20,000 if it's standing room only, whatever. But the listed capacity is 17.6.
They did a good job to make it not too exclusive to where it's like 4,000. That makes tickets go crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, 18,000 is basically what most basketball and hockey stadiums are.
Mm-hmm.
And now the stage doesn't going to obstruct a bunch of those seats, which it normally would, and so you'd lose like 2,000 to 4,000 a lot of times in those places. And this actually has 18,000 without losing that big chunk that's on that in spot. But it's not like it's like, it's open. Like you don't need to be drawing 30,000 to be the band who can go sit in there. Anyone who's basically doing regular stadium stuff can probably go in there and they're going to be able to make it work.
Yeah, and you also get stragglers from Vegas, so it's not like, well, we're in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and we're playing a show. Exactly. So unless it's our fans, I don't know how many random people we're going to attract. Well, it's Vegas, so anybody can be like, well, fuck it, I'm in town. There's a show there. I'm going to go see it.
Yeah, I mean, you have how many thousands and thousands of hotel rooms just on the Strip alone that anyone who's a casual person be like, oh, I guess we're not really doing anything tonight. What's $100 to go, or $150 to go see whatever band is in there? 6 to 8 months from now, assuming the tickets can drop that low on the day of. But you're going to pull people in.
You can lose that in 5 minutes at a craps table. Like, I mean, it's although, Chris, if you want to go see U2 next Friday the 13th, it's only $1,450, so not bad.
I mean, look, U2's a good band. I absolutely can't stand them. So
no, I'm with you.
I will at least give them credit, and it makes sense as an opening band. It's a big enough deal that they make sense because what else are you gonna get, right? I will say it was funny to see people be like, is this the future of concerts? And I'm like, well, yeah, for a cool $2.3 billion, you can do this in any city you want to.
That Sphere went way, way over budget and was in danger of going bankrupt by the time they actually got the fucking thing open.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a lot of money to put down for it to begin with.
Now, at least now you have a success story, seemingly. It's only been one show, so we'll see if it holds up to scrutiny over time. But, like, maybe LA, maybe New York, where the hell else could you put one of these things?
It's perfect for Vegas. It's like the theme of this thing is perfect.
I mean, you could finally get Futurama where you have Madison Cube Garden now.
That's right. Because other than that, I can't really think of where else you could put one of these things. Yeah, other major cities, but like those two in Vegas are the only ones that really come to mind unless you start looking globally. But Dubai. That said, maybe it probably shouldn't be the thing that proliferates the market anyways, because it needs to be a destination. If there's 30 of these, I don't know how much that people care anymore. It'd still be cool, don't get me wrong, but it's not like, whoa, it's a destination. I'm going to Vegas for that. It's I'm going to Vegas and I can also do that maybe.
How long before they put the Final Four in there?
Yeah, I was just thinking smaller. I was thinking like what high school in the area gets to have their graduation inside this fucking thing for no reason whatsoever and not making use of the graphical capabilities at all.
Yeah, I feel like they'll put a fucking basketball on it again and they'll put the Final Four in there at some point. And
well, I mean, we had what was it WNBA? Who was doing the interactive court earlier this year?
The women's.
No, it was a foreign league, maybe? Was it overseas? I think it was an overseas league.
Oh, okay.
Somebody was doing like a high-tech court where you could see like the ball bouncing off of it. It would like ripple and it would like graphics would show up when they made shots. I'm like, I guess that would be the equivalent here. You take a sporting event here and you want a defense chant, and it's like 360 all over the place. And like Jim Nance is having a heart attack. I don't know why he's calling a basketball game, but he's there and he's dying because he's too old and he doesn't understand.
I mean, again, as a wrestling fan, I want to watch wrestling in there.
Yeah,
put like the big entrance videos up there.
Yeah, boxing seems like it's inevitable. Is mixed. I think as popularity as boxing is, I think boxing ends up in there at some point. The UFC literally hangs out in Vegas.
It's just
like headquartered there.
None of those sports really need the graphics, Like I'm sure
but you
they
just
could
do
use
it
them,
because.
but you can advertise it on the outside, and it is still again like the scene. It's the to do. So I get it, but I'm trying to think of things that actually can use it. And high school graduations and MMA are not among that list.
Hey, I think it's kind of hard to see live in the tiny little cage. You just put the replay of the thing over and over and over again.
Okay, but again, like, when somebody's leg snaps.
Oh, it's fine.
Now you've got it in 6,000p.
Yeah, they don't care.
You know what you're paying for.
Yeah, I mean, I guess an MMA fan should know what to expect.
I got to say, the idea of the basketball court, the interactive basketball court, we could finally have the NBA Jam, like 4-point spots, the hot spots on the court. We have a 6-point shot. Like, I don't know, like maybe the XNBA or the XBA or whatever you want to call it can start up with this type of thing. I mean,
it was weird and it was distracting. I thought it was going to be cooler than it was, and there were a couple of things that were neat when I watched some of the highlights. But it's also now a glass floor, and I'm not sure how that's going to go over with players. There's really no cushion in glass whatsoever. So, if we're worried about Gordon Hayward situations, it feels like that's even worse, especially when the floor lights up and does slot machine rainbow effects as he's on the ground writhing in pain.
And then it gets stuck and they can't turn it off.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's on a loop of him breaking his leg, and kids are turning away, and their parents are shooting their eyes, and then people are screaming, and as always, technology could be used for good or for bad. Really, it's just up to whoever's using it. And that's our show. Look at all the topics we talked about. Isn't that neat?
Yeah. Covered a lot. We all knew about things, about everything.
Yeah,
Diamondbacks won today. That, we didn't get to say that, but yay. Yay.
Yeah.
We don't care about baseball. Yay.
Diamondbacks won. We watched a little of it, I guess. And that's a lot for us because, unlike Cody, we're not really baseball fans.
Yep. Not at all.
Awful.
It's a good time of year.
If you want to get back to the NHL, by the way, the regular season starts in a week.
I saw they're already in preseason. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. October 10th is the opening night.
And episode 600 would be the week of Thanksgiving, so we may have to consider if we're actually going to do that. Although there is the 28th before December, so we might be saved as long as we don't miss any other shows. And I'm not going to be out of town, so we shouldn't be missing any more. I think we'll be okay. Episode 600 coming soon. It'll be a big show. We'll have a lot of guests. I don't know what we're going to do yet, but we'll talk to the crew and we'll tease it more as we get closer.
All right. It's coming. 600. Jeez.
600. Not as big as 500, obviously. I mean, 500 is just that big round number that's different than the other hundreds, but
it's 100 bigger.
Yeah, but
it's literally 100 bigger.
I remember the fact of how big of a deal we made out of episode 100 back in the day, back in 2013, when it was just oh my God, episode 100, man, we made it to 100 episodes. We just blasted through 100 episodes like nothing, basically.
You were young and you didn't, you're optimistic about the world.
Yeah, we were foolish and didn't care.
Yeah.
Now I'm old and grizzled and bitter, and I'm still here because this is one of the few things that gives me joy. And there's your lasting image as we walk off into the sunset. In between episodes, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com or youtube.com/objectionnetwork. We'll be back next week and seemingly every Tuesday until Thanksgiving with regular episodes. We'll see you next time.